Welcome to the debate. Today we're unpacking a phenomenon that has completely disrupted our understanding of the music industry.
Disrupted is putting it mildly, honestly.
Right, well, it's golden. The inescapable hit song by the virtual K-pop group HUNTR X from Netflix's 2025 animated film, K-pop Demon Hunters. I mean, $100 million to launch a band that doesn't physically exist.
Exactly. No physical bodies, but somehow they still manage to take home a Grammy. It really is a fascinating anomaly, isn't it? Because we're so used to, romanticizing the underdog story in music.
Sure. The garage band, the starving artist.
Right. The artist struggling in dive bars until they finally break through purely on raw talent. And HUNTR X they completely shatter that narrative.
They do. And I mean, that tension is exactly what we're exploring today, because the core question is, did Golden shatter these boundaries and sweep award season because it represents a genuine, unprecedented artistic triumph? Because I'm arguing that it absolutely did.
And I'm assuming you're looking at the musicality there.
Exactly. I look at this track and I see a masterful artistic synthesis. It's this brilliant blending of Broadway's emotional storytelling with elite K-pop production. And it's anchored by some of the most, frankly, astonishing human vocal performances we've heard this decade.
Well, I come at it from a very different perspective. I argue that the dominance of Golden is purely a triumph of industrial engineering.
Industrial engineering. Really?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating case study in capital deployment. I mean, they leveraged a massive promotional vehicle and these entirely risk-free virtual avatars to create an unfair, unbeatable systemic advantage over traditional human music acts.
Unbeatable systemic advantage. Okay, well, let's start with the art itself then, because I truly believe the foundation of this track's legacy is its musical architecture.
Sure, let's talk architecture.
Right, because Golden is a masterpiece precisely because it merges two entirely distinct philosophies that, on paper, really shouldn't work together.
The Broadway and the K-pop elements?
Exactly. On one hand, you have the classic Broadway I want song narrative, and that was spearheaded by theater veterans, right? Ian Eisendrath and Mark Sonnenblick. But on the other hand, you have the production team from the Black Label, so Teddy, 24, and Ido, and they brought what we call the maximalist drip of K-pop.
Right. And for those who might not live and breathe K-pop production, what exactly do you mean by maximalist drip in this context?
Oh, it's that specific K-pop sound where every single frequency feels perfectly packed. I mean, there is barely room to breathe in the mix.
Wall-to-wall sound.
Yeah. Massive synth bass, relentless heavy bass, these densely stacked vocal harmonies, it's all competing for your attention at the exact same time. But what makes Golden transcend being just a fun, cartoon song is the human core driving that wall of sound.
The vocalists.
Yes, the vocal chemistry of the three singers, EJ, Audrey Nonai, and Rayami. And astonishingly, they recorded their parts entirely separately.
In completely different studios.
Yeah, right. But they achieved this emotional resonance that, it just proves digital avatars can deliver profound human artistry.
I hear the passion you have for the musicality, I really do. And I'm not denying that Teddy and his team are absolute masters of their craft, but focusing solely on the art, well, it really ignores the staggering financial brute force happening here.
Financial brute force. That's a pretty strong way to describe a movie release.
But look at the numbers. I mean, consider a traditional top-tier K-pop group. A massive company like SM Entertainment might debut a flagship group like aespa with roughly, a $5 million budget?
Give or take, yeah, which is huge.
In the music industry, that is already astronomical. Netflix, however, spent over $100 million using a global feature film as a hyper-targeted promotional vehicle.
Well, they were making a movie.
But they didn't just release a song. They executed a strategic drop of a murderer's row of 4 elite tracks simultaneously. They entirely bypassed the years of organic growth, the fan meetings, the grueling touring that real idols require to build the fan base.
So that they had a shortcut.
It wasn't just a shortcut. It was designed from the ground up to establish an unbeatable, infinitely scalable intellectual property It is, above all else, a flawlessly engineered industrial product.
Okay, so they spent $100 million to get it on our screens. I see why you think the budget is the whole story.
It's a very loud part of the story.
It is, but money doesn't make a song stay at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 8 consecutive weeks. You can buy the first click, absolutely, but you cannot buy the millionth replay.
Well,
Let's look at the actual anatomy of the hook. Because daily Spotify streams for Golden jumped from 1.6 million to 19.9 million in roughly a week. You have to look at the sonic crack of the track itself to understand why.
sonic crack is certainly an interesting term for it.
It is, because it is engineered, yes, but it's engineered by artists making deeply intentional choices. Take the specific analog, epic tom drum used right at the 1.37 mark of the track.
The transition moment in the animation?
Exactly. If you listen closely, it's not a standard pop loop you just pull from a library. That drum strike is a bespoke artistic choice that reacts directly to the visual action. It instantly shifts the song into this epic, cinematic mode.
Right, it's very effective.
Teddy combined that heavy bass with Ian Eisendrath's descending chord sequences. And those descending chords literally reflect the main character's internal sorrow. And then they're followed immediately by intense syncopation in the pre-chorus.
Creating the tension.
Yes, the push and pull, the tension and release. Money gets you on a Spotify playlist, sure. But that level of musical architecture is what keeps a human being hitting replay 20 million times a day.
That's a really compelling breakdown of the music theory. It really is. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy that the musical architecture was the primary driver of retention here.
You don't think the music is why people listened to the music?
I think the audience was captivated by an inescapable distribution model. Think about it less like a grassroots artistic movement and more like a military carpet bombing strategy.
Wow. So you're saying the platform dictated the emotional response?
I'm saying that when an ecosystem like Netflix forces a highly polished 2-hour narrative into millions of living rooms simultaneously all over the globe, the art becomes entirely secondary to the access.
I completely disagree with that.
But think about it. If you have a captive audience of hundreds of millions of subscribers who are pushed a massive visual spectacle the second they open their app, the song doesn't have to fight for attention.
It still has to be good, though.
But an indie band or even a real K-pop group has to fight through the noise. With HUNTR X, the avatars are right there on your TV. The lore, the backstory, the personalities, it is all spoon-fed to you in 4K resolution.
Spoon-fed is a bit dismissive.
It is frictionless consumption. Of course they streamed it 20 million times. Netflix practically built a custom highway directly to their brains.
It feels like you're comparing a synthesized diamond to an earth-mined one, right? And suggesting that because the pressure was applied in a massive Netflix server farm rather than a local underground club scene, the listener's emotional reaction isn't genuine.
I'm not saying the reaction isn't genuine. I'm saying the game is rigged.
But the light that diamond reflects is entirely real. And that brings me to the humans actually powering the so-called industrial product.
Ah, you mean the biological engines?
I mean the artists. The biological engines, really? The deep psychological layers injected into this project are astounding, and they come from real human experience. Let's talk about EJ.
The voice of Rumi.
Right. The human who provides the singing voice for the group's leader. EJ isn't just a random session singer they pulled off the street. She was an actual trainee at a major K-pop agency in the early 2000s.
Which is a brilliant casting choice, structurally.
But it's more than structure. She deeply understands the crushing pressure of the idol training system. She brought that visceral, real-life trauma to her vocal performance.
And how does that translate to a flawlessly animated 3D character exactly?
It translates through the concept of deficiency motivation. This desperate, clawing need Rumi has to be absolutely perfect to cover up her half-demon scars. It's not just a compelling backstory written by a screenwriter, it is literally in the vocal pedagogy.
You're talking about the technique on the track.
Yes, listen to EJ's agility. She leaps from these breathy, highly vulnerable lows in the verse directly into belting an E5 right at the passaggio.
And just to clarify, the passaggio is...
Right, sorry. The passaggio is the transitional bridge between the chest voice and the head voice.
It is notoriously difficult to navigate smoothly, especially at that volume.
Right.
And then at the climax of the song, she repeatedly hits a soaring A5 on the word born. That requires immense diaphragmatic support and masterclass vocal placement. You can hear the strain, the real human struggle in the recording.
It is a technically flawless performance, yes.
Add in Audrey Nuna's effortless R&B phrasing for the character Mira and Rayami's biting, aggressive staccato rap for Zoe. Rayami even pulled the lyric "Gold dust on my fingertips" directly from her own personal teenage diary.
The diary entry, right. I've read about that.
The dissonance between this perfectly rendered 3D cartoon face and the emotionally devastated, straining human voice, that is where the magic lives. That is profound human artistry pouring out of these avatars.
I completely agree that EJ's vocal performance is spectacular. But have you considered the systemic advantage these avatars possess, precisely because they shield those human artists from reality?
Shield them.
Yes! EJ hits an incredible E5 and A5 in a climate-controlled studio, but the entity that the public falls in love with, the avatar Rumi, she does not tear her vocal cords doing it night after night.
Well, they are animated characters. The audience knows they aren't real flesh and blood.
Do they? The parasocial relationship, the deep emotional bond fans form, is with the invulnerable corporate asset. Think about a real idol group. If a human dancer twists her ankle during a 12-hour rehearsal...
The comeback is delayed.
Exactly. The tour is paused. If a real singer gets embroiled in a dating scandal, the company's stock literally plummets. But the avatars? They don't sleep, they don't age, they don't fatigue, and they certainly don't get caught by paparazzi.
That's just the nature of animation, though.
But it fundamentally changes the competition. The lyrics of Golden literally say, "Bleeding isn't in my blood," and "unbreakable forever."
Which is a reference to Rumi being half demon.
In the movie, yes, it's a clever reference. But on an industrial level, that is the literal truth of the IP. They are unbreakable because they are just lines of code on a server. It is entirely unfair to benchmark actual flesh and blood human musicians against a flawlessly rendered, bulletproof digital product.
That is an interesting point. Though I would frame it differently. I'd argue that the invulnerability of the avatar actually allows the human artist behind it to take much greater emotional and vocal risks.
Because they don't face the backlash?
Precisely. Because they don't have the physical danger of ruining their on-screen image. But, let's actually test your theory about this invulnerable IP in the real world. Because the 2026 award season proved that this project relies entirely on fragile human artistry when you take the safety net away.
Ah, you're referring to the live promotional television tour?
Exactly. Netflix didn't just play the movie on a screen at the Oscars. EJ, Audrey Nuna, and Rayami physically stepped out from behind the animation.
They did.
They performed live on Saturday Night Live, The Tonight Show, the Grammys. They did that incredible symphonic arrangement on Jimmy Kimmel. But the definitive piece of evidence for me was the 2026 Brit Awards.
Where the musical director changed the key of the song?
Yes, and that is a crucial piece of evidence for the artistic side. The musical director made the bold, highly authentic choice to transpose Golden down a full tone for the live television performance.
And we know why they did that.
Because the studio version is heavily compressed and layered with that maximalist K-pop drip we talked about earlier. It is physically nearly impossible for a human being to belt an A5 while executing high-intensity choreography without relying heavily on a backing vocal track.
Right. Which most pop stars use anyway.
Exactly.
But by dropping the song a full tone, EJ was able to naturally belt a G5 entirely live using her real voice over a live band.
Yes, she did.
That compromise, sacrificing the flawless, compressed studio illusion to allow a human vocal cord to function dynamically on a physical stage, that proves they are real musicians. They are adapting their art for a visceral live performance. It wasn't just an engineer pressing play on a corporate algorithm. It was raw, volatile, live vocal chemistry.
It's so fascinating how two people can look at the exact same event and see totally opposing realities.
You don't see the vulnerability there?
I look at that Brit Awards performance, and I don't see a triumph of human vulnerability at all. I see a proof of concept for the ultimate industrial extraction.
Wait, how can rearranging a song to protect a singer's live vocal health be an industrial extraction? That doesn't make sense.
Because those live television appearances were just the top of the marketing funnel. You look at the Brit Awards in isolation, the zoom out. Look at the massive K-pop laser light shows that filled up planetariums across the United States.
Which were beautiful, by the way.
Visually stunning. Look at the theatrical sing-along releases that grossed $19 million and topped the box office weeks after the movie dropped. All of this was carefully orchestrated groundwork for what Amy Reinhardt announced at the Netflix upfronts in New York.
The 2027 AEG Presents World Tour.
Exactly.
Which is going to feature the real human vocalists performing live on stage.
Yes, performing alongside colossal holographic representations and stadium-scale projection mapping of the animated battles. It is a massive hybrid model. It is designed specifically to monetize the parasocial relationships audiences have formed with non-existent beings.
Monetize the parasocial relationships?
Yes, the transposition at the Brits wasn't some noble artistic sacrifice. It was a physical necessity to ensure the biological engines could survive a grueling, highly lucrative global touring schedule.
So you think it was just asset protection?
Absolutely. It is a frictionless touring monopoly. They have taken the highest margin aspects of live music, the stadium tour, and fused it with the infinite scalability of cinema and tech. They created a revenue vacuum.
A revenue vacuum?
The art, the vocal strain, the clever Broadway chord progressions you love so much, it's just the bait.
I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning, mostly because it inherently assumes the audience is being tricked.
Not tricked, just managed.
You're framing the fans as passive consumers getting sucked into a revenue vacuum. But when you look deeply at the underlying meaning of the lyrics, particularly the philosophical shift in the second half of the film, it becomes incredibly clear that the audience is engaging with highly sophisticated art.
You're talking about the resolution of Rumi's character arc.
Right. We talked about deficiency motivation earlier, this idea that Rumi thinks she has to be a flawless, shining idol to be worthy of love. She wants to hide her demon scars. That's what Golden is initially about.
Yes, the pursuit of perfection.
But the sheer brilliance of the project is that the narrative eventually deconstructs its own hit song. By the end of the film, they introduce the counter song, What It Sounds Like. In that moment, Rumi embraces radical self-acceptance.
The scar changes.
Right. Her demon scar doesn't magically turn golden and disappear. It turns into a rainbow. It becomes a symbol of mindful maturity integrating all her flaws. The audience isn't being manipulated by a shiny, invulnerable IP. They are actively participating in a profound narrative about the danger of seeking perfection.
I see what you're saying, but
Just to finish the thought, the fact that a complex, bilingual exploration of flawed self-worth dominated global charts is a massive testament to the audience's appetite for deep, meaningful art, regardless of whether a human or a hologram is singing it.
Look, I don't deny the narrative complexity. Broadway veterans like Eisendrath know exactly how to pull our emotional strings, and they did it masterfully. But the irony is absolutely glaring, isn't it?
What irony?
A massive corporate juggernaut spends $100 million engineering a flawlessly perfect, digitally invulnerable virtual idol group to teach teenagers a lesson about the dangers of seeking perfection.
Well, art often uses artifice to reveal truth. Fiction is a lie that tells the truth.
Sure. But when the artifice structurally disadvantages every independent artist trying to make a living in the real world, we have to question the cost of that truth.
I don't think it disadvantages them.
If a traditional K-pop company or an independent label in London or New York cannot compete for attention unless they have a 9-figure cinematic universe backing their debut, we aren't just blurring the lines between cinema and music.
We're raising the bar.
No, we are setting a terrifying new standard where only mega corporations can afford to manufacture the authenticity that audiences crave.
And yet, even with $1 billion in server power, if EJ doesn't stand up to the microphone and deliver that staggering, heart-wrenching A5 on the word born, if Audrey Nuna doesn't bring her lived-in, distinctly human R&B phrasing to the track, the song falls completely flat.
It's a key ingredient, I'll give you that.
It's the soul. Money can build the stadium, money can render the holograms, but money cannot synthesize the human soul that echoes inside it.
Perhaps. But it certainly dictates who gets the keys to the stadium in the first place.
Well, as we wrap up our analysis of this incredible phenomenon, my position remains firm. Despite the massive budget and despite the unprecedented systemic backing of Netflix, Golden ultimately won its Oscars, its Grammys, and the hearts of the public through its profound musical architecture.
We will definitely have to agree to disagree on the primary driver there.
Fair enough. I believe the bold synthesis of Broadway narrative structures and K-pop production, combined with astonishing, technically brilliant human vocal performances, created a genuinely beautiful new canvas for artistic collaboration.
And my position remains that Golden permanently rewrote the rules of the music industry by leveraging a systemic advantage that simply cannot be matched by human acts.
The industrial machine.
Exactly. By shielding itself from human liability through virtual avatars and setting up an infinitely exploitable live touring model, it represents a brilliant but highly concerning triumph of industrial mechanics over organic musical growth.
Well, what we can certainly agree on is that the K-pop Demon Hunters phenomenon has forever blurred the lines between cinema, pop music, and virtual reality. The industry will never look at an animated release or a K-pop debut the exact same way again.
Undoubtedly. The blueprint has been successfully drawn, and the 2027 tour will only cement it further into the industry standard. Complexity like this really requires multiple perspectives to fully appreciate what's happening beneath the surface.
It absolutely does. And there is so much more to explore in the source material we analyzed today, from the intricate measure-by-measure breakdowns of the vocal mechanics to the deep analysis of the bilingual lyrics.
There really is a lot to unpack.
We highly encourage you to dive into those layers to see which side of the illusion you find more compelling. Because at the end of the day, when you're staring at that diamond, whether it was pulled from the dirt or built in a server farm, only you can decide if the light it shines feels real to you.
We'll leave that judgment entirely up to you.
Thank you for joining us.